Pastor Rob, and you can please come up.
Over the past several years, we've been hearing on the news, reading about newspapers, magazines, politicians, about the great controversy we have in this country about building a wall across our border with Mexico. It's on the news. It seems like almost every day we hear some reason why we need the wall or reasons why we don't need the wall. And building a wall on our Mexican border has been something that we've advocated since at least the 1980s. I know Dr. Fields had actually an issue of his publication, The Thunderbolt, which actually a design of how the wall should look. Now, I don't know if Donald Trump has read The Thunderbolt in years gone by, but nevertheless, building a wall is really not a new idea, but it became popular under the Donald Trump's running for president, and then after he became president, building the wall. And most Americans that I understand, and I think is correct, most Americans, and let me preface by saying most white Americans are in favor of a wall. There are others who are not white who also favor a wall because economically it's beneficial to them, obviously. But most white Americans are in favor of a wall. They want a wall built. And then other people say a wall is immoral. I'm sure you heard that before. It's immoral to build. That's not who we are. We're supposed to be a nation that welcomes people. Because why? We are a nation of immigrants. You've heard that before. We are a nation of immigrants. Of course, they don't ever want to point out that we're a nation of white immigrants. We were a nation of white immigrants until at least 1965, and that's when Lyndon Johnson signed into law the Hart-Celler Amendment, changed our immigration policy, because prior to that, immigration was restricted primarily to Europeans, and so our immigration policy was changed at that time, and we became flooded with non-white people, non-European people into this country, and then of course the illegal aliens have flooded into the country also. So it's not really, it's reality, it's not just illegal aliens, but aliens as a whole that are changing America. And they're changing America, changing our culture, they're changing our moral, changing our values, and they're changing our country. And we're not going to have a country that your forefathers do, unless we get a hold of this insane immigration policy that we have. Now, a few years ago, I saw a sign on a church, a marquee, you know, the old billboard they put out in front of churches, and the marquee or the billboard said, let's see, it said, people spend more time building walls than they do, and not enough time building bridges. People spend more time building walls and not enough time building bridges. Why? Because walls are immoral. And so we, as good Christians, are told we should be building walls out to people. And because, you know, walls are just moral, they keep people that are in need coming to this country. Families are broken apart, and it's just a terrible thing. You see the tears on TV because they say that they are being harmed by this wall that Donald Trump wants to build, and America wants to build along our southern border. Now, we are told by many churches, not all churches, I won't say all of them, but told by many churches that we need to build more bridges. People are saying we need to build more bridges. There's some symbols up there, more bridges. And we see there in the one that bridges equal love and walls equal hate. It's just that simple. I mean, if you want a wall, you're a hater. You need to just come to terms with that. You're a hateful person if you want a wall. And I guess that'll extend to live in a gated community, because a lot of these people live in a gated community. So if you live in a gated community, you're a hater. If you have a wall around your home, you're a hater. If you have locked doors, you're a hater. I mean, that would be the message. Of course, they don't want to give that specific because they know it's really not true. But they do want us to have open borders and allow aliens to come into our homeland, into our nation. And So this pastor who had a sign on from his church, I don't know what his motives were. I don't know him. I never talked to him. I don't know what his motives were, but it was just the idea, the concept that we don't spend enough time building bridges. We should build bridges and not spend so much time building walls. Now the idea is, of course, the idea in most people's minds who don't analyze this properly is that bridges equal this love. And if you have this love in your heart, you're not going to want to build a wall around people. You're going to want to welcome people and let them know they're welcome and come to our homeland and into our nation. It'll make you feel good. It'll really make you feel good to know that. I mean, you just can't imagine how good you're going to feel when you just open up borders and let them just flood into our country. And I think it'll make you really feel good. And so that's what we're told. And so we are hearing this message that we need to build bridges and not walls around our nation, and because it will make you feel good. Now, the prophets in the Old Testament, they weren't interested in feeling good. They're just interested in telling the truth, and they warned the nation of impending danger. We're told in Ezekiel that a watchman is supposed to stand on the wall and warn the nation, and yet from what we hear from people today, so many of these people, is that we should be, instead of trying to build a wall, we should just reach out to all of the world and don't give them like a big hug. Like, come on, guys, group hug, let's have a hug fest. And that's what they would want to, they don't say it that way, of course, but that's kind of what they imply, that we should be more loving. We're just bad people. We're just bad people. We're hateful people because we want a wall around our country. And you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Now, this preacher who put this marquee up in front of his church, the implication is that walls are cold, walls are immoral, and walls are just bad. They're just bad things. You should not want a wall. You should want a bridge to people. And because bridges are warm and kind and friendly and just really nice. Bridges, it's so nice, Wall, oh, terrible. And because Christ would want a bridge, wouldn't he? I mean, wouldn't Christ want to reach out to people? We see pictures like this, Jesus, everybody, the whole world is walking. Well, that's not what I read in the Bible. The Bible said that the road to the kingdom is the narrow road. And the wide road leads to death and destruction. It really isn't. Jesus is like this. Satan is like this. Because Satan doesn't care. He don't care what your morals are. He don't care what your values are. He don't even care what your gender is or what your perceived gender is. He doesn't care. You're welcome to him. Just come on. He doesn't really care. He's not at all intolerant, not Satan. He's tolerant to everybody with every philosophy and every ideas and every gender, every perceived gender and every corrupt value you may have. I mean, I imagine Jeffrey Epstein is probably welcome into the kingdom of Satan. And so we get this wrong concept. And I know a lot of churches, I'll point this out before, a lot of churches have big signs down in front. Everybody welcome? Well, we don't have a sign down there, but in our case, we'll probably say, you may not be welcome. You may not be welcome. In fact, if you're a homosexual, you're not welcome. You're a race mixture, you're not welcome. You're a moral degenerate, you're not welcome. And if you're not sure what gender you are, you're not welcome. So we'll be very specific, very limited. But then we're bad, we're evil people, we're intolerant, because we should let everybody, right? That's what we're being told. So bridges are ChristLike. Bridges are like being like Jesus. And walls are being they're bad. They're bad. Wall, terrible person. And I looked up the word wall in a dictionary, and it says, a wall is a structure that defines an area, carries a load, provides security, shelter, or soundproofing, or is decorative. And there's other definitions, of course, for a wall, but that's the main one I saw there. And I looked up bridge, and what I read was a bridge is a structure built to span a physical obstacle, such as a body of water, a valley, or road, without closing the way underneath. So we want bridges, we're told, to bring people to us. In fact, I read here a while back where some minister was bragging about how wonderful it is that all these immigrants come to our country. He said, just wonderful, because it used to be that we had to go out, we had to send missionaries to the world. But he said, it's wonderful now. The world is coming to us. Isn't that wonderful? And so anyway, I guess he was a loving person. Well, so anyway, we got the bridges and walls, and the preacher here that put that up, he probably wasn't thinking all those ideas. He probably was thinking more on the idea of maybe of relationships with people, building relationships, building bridges to people. And there's probably some value to that. I'm certain there is. Now, the word wall appears 163 times in the King James Version, and the word walls, the plural, appears 63 times. Bridges doesn't appear at all. That word, I'm sure there's probably other words that would have the same meaning. But I don't know what the preacher was trying to say, except that it seems like he was trying to send a signal from his marquee on a church that in our dealings with people, building walls are not good and building bridges are good. And so, in some ways, we can certainly understand that. We don't want to cut off relationship with people. We don't want to cut them off. We want to be welcoming to people. We want people that are in need, people that are hurting, people that are seeking understanding what happened in our nation, in personal lives. We understand that we don't want to put the shell around us that we can't relate to people. So the preacher may not have been thinking in the same way that I'm looking at here. But still, the idea is that we so often hear is that we need more bridges, and we're too busy trying to build walls. And of course, the worst wall right now is the wall with Mexico. But the question is more complex than that, because there are ways we can look at how to relate. I mean, if you want to build a bridge, you got relationships with your family, you got relationships with friends, you got a relationship with other Christians, the relationship with people that are not Christians. You got a relationship with them. You got. And how do we as a people? I know the preacher didn't think about this part, but how do we as a race of people, how do we relate to people of other races? How do we relate to people of our own race? How do we relate to them? Or people of our own faith, or people of another faith? How do we as a nation relate to those within our nation and who are white or citizens, and those who just pretend to be Americans? Because really that's what we have. We've got Americans and those who are pretending to be Americans. They might have the citizenship papers, and they might have stood there in front of the judge, and immigration judge, and took their little oath and said, you're now a U.S. citizen, but that doesn't make a person an American. Those are pretend Americans. How do we relate to those people? And that's what we're looking at. To make a statement that we have to build more bridges can be scriptural. But it can also be unscriptural, depending on who or what we're building a bridge to. What are we built bridge? What are the bridge being built to? This is very important. Now, I read the definition of bridges a moment ago, but here's my definition. A bridge is a connection between two opposites. To me, that's a bridge between two opposites. Because if they're not opposites, you don't need a bridge, do you? You need a bridge because there are opposites. And so there are people with opposing ideas and opposing thoughts and opposing values and opposing spirits. You don't want to bridge to those people. So for that reason, we have to understand that there are good bridges and there are bad bridges. And those who want to build a bad bridge are not our friends. And there are also good walls and bad walls. All walls are not necessarily good. Some walls are bad. Just to say we want to build a bridge doesn't mean anything. It's meaningless. Totally meaningless. And the people say it. Build bridges, not walls. What does that mean? Really, it doesn't mean anything. Except that maybe it appeals to somebody's childish ideas that, the world is like a big flower and we're just like all Smurfs dancing around, And there's evil in the world. That's why the Apostle Paul says, put on the armor of God. There is evil in the world. You don't build bridge to evil. So there are good bridges, there are bad bridges, there are good walls, there are bad walls. Just to say wall is bad or bridge is good doesn't mean anything. And kind of what I guess we'll right to Ecclesiastes 3. You're going to build a wall. I mean, to everything there's a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal, a time to break down, a time to build up. It also says there's a time to pick up stones, time to cast away stones, and time to love, and time to hate, and time to kill, and time to heal. So, there's time to build bridges. There's time to build bridges. There's time to tear down bridges. There's time to build walls, and there's time to tear down walls. Now, there are some good bridges. Here's a good bridge. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. That's a good bridge. Relationships with your folks. But you know, that's deeper. That's as far as most churches take it. They kind of leave it there. What was that last line? Upon the land which the Lord giveth thee. If you want to dwell permanently in this land, honor not just your mom and dad, honor your forefathers, honor your heritage, all those values that made you what you are today. Because if you don't, he don't say it there, but what happens? It's called genocide. White genocide. We in our nation today are not honoring our fathers. We're not honoring our mothers. We're not honoring our ancestors. We're not honoring all those brave men and women who traveled westward across the expansion, the manifest destiny. We're not honoring them. And our days upon the land is coming to a dark shadow upon us. Will our days upon the land be long, or will our days upon our land be short? So it's not just talking about mom and dad, but it's also talking about your ancestors. Do you honor your ancestors? Because if you do not, judgment is going to come upon your people. Honor your father and your mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Now, some people watch this on the internet may not see it that way. I understand. I'm just telling you the way I see it. And it's important to love your heritage. We're to love our neighbor. Of course, we understand neighbor from Leviticus. It refers to your kinsman. We are to love our kinsmen. Love our people. We're told to do unto them as we will have them do unto us. Those are good relationships. Those are good bridges. We're told to forgive each other. That's a good bridge. We're told to forgive each other. When Christ said love your enemies, he's not talking about God's enemies. Because God has enemies. He's not talking about God's, he's talking about your enemies. Because wherever we go, we're going to meet people that we just don't get along with within our church. That's the trouble with small churches. You might want to point out that's the trouble with small churches, because in a small church, as the church is trying to grow, there's always going to be someone that comes that somebody might not like. And instead of understanding, hey, just because my personality doesn't click with that person, doesn't mean that person's a bad person. Our personalities don't click. But so often what happens is that person begins rumor mongering among other people in the church. Pretty soon you have a fight, and you be arguments, or somebody ostracized or whatever. That can't happen very easily in a large church because there's just so many people. It insulates rumor mongering. But a small church, it can be devastating. And small churches find that trouble all the time, including our church. And so he says to love your enemies. There may be people you don't care for. There may be people you may not like even. But understand that doesn't mean anything. You still love your enemies and forgive them and understand. You can't build a movement out of only people who like each other. So he says to love and forgive and try to understand. And Christ became then, of course, the example of that bridge. He demonstrated that. How? Of course, we know he demonstrated that because of the cross. He demonstrated that because of the cross, because we understand that he came to pay the price of redemption for who? For his people, for Israel. I know the churches can wander off into no man's land on that, but he came to redeem those who are the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, your people. This wonderful covenant that God made with them. We read in Genesis 12 and Genesis 17, this wonderful covenant made with Abraham and Sarah and all their generation. That's your people. And he paid the price on Calvary for their redemption. And you only redeem something that was yours. So he paid the price of redemption. He demonstrated that bridge between our sinful, human, flawed character and his perfection. And it doesn't mean when you forgive somebody, if you say somebody did me wrong, and he's really basically, I'm not talking about evil people. I'm just talking about people within our church, within our movement, people that you may not care for, whatever reason. He said you got to forgive them. Now, it doesn't mean just because you forgive somebody, doesn't mean they have to become your best friend or best buddy. You can forgive somebody and without them becoming your best buddy, you just understand that you're not going to focus on it anymore. And the person that you're forgiving may not even want your forgiveness. In fact, they may even do it all, whatever they did, they may do it all over again if given the opportunity. But you still have to forgive them. Not because, well, the reason you have to forgive them is because it changes your focus. If you don't forgive them, then you're focused on them all the time. You focus on your anger all the time. And Christ said, hey, I don't want you to be focused on anger. I don't want you to be focused on that. I want you to focus on building up the church. When I refer to the church here, I'm not talking about just this here. I'm talking about this white racial awakening of our people in opposition to the attempt to destroy our nation, our culture, our heritage, and bring about white genocide. The churches being the called out ones who are seeking and working towards white Christian revival. Don't focus on that. You may not get along with them, you may not like them, but don't focus on them. Focus on building this cause, awakening our people. And a person you're forgiving may not even be aware that they even did anything wrong. I've seen that happen. I'm sure I've offended people without even realizing it. I've got a good friend. There's only one person here who knows I'm talking about. But I have a good friend who I watched one time, pastor of a church, looking at somebody, the person is talking to him. They're talking, and they're engaged in conversation. But the pastor, his mind wandered somewhere else. And all of a sudden, he turned around and walked away, right? Well, the guy's talking to him. Just wandered away. And I know this guy, he didn't do that on purpose. We get preoccupied. We do things. We make mistakes. We make blunders. And so sometimes people may offend you, or I may offend you, or somebody else may offend you. And just understand, hey, it just happens. Nobody does it on purpose. Anyway, Christ paid the ultimate price, made the ultimate bridge, and forgave us. We got a reference here on the screen. He has shown you, O man, what is good and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. That's our requirement. God built a bridge from heaven to earth through the cross. And in Romans 5:8 says, I've got it on the screen there, for God showed his great love for us in this way. Christ died for us while we are still sinners. Now the word us is very specific. I know the churches, most churches are going to kind of make that mean everybody in the world, but that isn't what it's meaning. It's me talking to who? The sons and daughters of Abraham, Israel. Your people are what we'll call today the white race. That's who he's talking to. Said that he loved us before we loved him. Now there are some those are some good bridges. There are some bad bridges. And it's these bad bridges that people fail so often to understand. What is a bad bridge? Anything which connects God's kingdom with Satan's rebellion is a bad bridge. You want a dialogue with them. We don't want to discuss with them. I've had people say, well, homosexuals, they have their rights. We need to get together and have a dialogue. I don't have the interest in having a dialogue with sodomites. Because when you begin to have a dialogue, then you're diluting your commitment. It's a bad bridge. That's why Paul said, put on the armor of God. Put on the armor of God. Paul says also, don't be unequally yoked. Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers? For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? In other words, don't build a bridge. And what communion hath light with darkness? Don't build a bridge to darkness. And what concord has Christ with Baal? Don't build a bridge to Baal, false worship. Or what part hath he that believeth with infidel? Don't build a bridge. And what agreement hath the temple of God with idols? Don't build a bridge to those who worship idols. For ye, now this is very interesting, and you got to really pay attention here. He's talking to the people of Corinth, and he said, you are the temple of God, the living God, as God has said, and that's a very important word I'm going to refer to in a minute. As God hath said, I will dwell in them, walk in them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Wherefore come out from among them and be separate, saith the Lord. And touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you. Will be a father unto you, and ye shall be my sons and daughters, saith the Lord. Who is he talking to? He's talking to your people. Not the people we call Jews today, the Khazars. He's talking about you, your ancestors, those who came from the nations of Europe, England, Scotland, Ireland, Germany, Norway, Russia, Sweden, Greece. All those countries of Europe were the sons and daughters of Israel migrated to. He's talking to your people. That's who he's talking to. He's telling them to be separate, build a wall of protection. And Ezekiel, he said, put a watchman. We mentioned that a moment ago. Build a watchman on the wall to get an eye out for the enemy. He didn't say put a watchman on the wall to build a bridge. What kind of watchman would be that? Going to build a bridge into the gate, into the city. Watchmen are there protected. You have walls and gates. Now, most churches, I'm going to try it very quickly because we're getting past the hour. Most churches tell us that this is referring to Christians versus non-Christians. And there is an element of truth to that, but only a tiny one. For you are the temple of the living God, as God says. I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. As God said, Paul said. Where did he say that at? Where did he tell? First of all, these people of Corinth are only 50 miles from the city of Athens, where Apostle Paul said these people of Athens are the offspring of God. These people were Israelites. And he says, as God said, I will dwell among. Where did he say that? He said that talking to Israel in Exodus 29. And I will dwell among the children of Israel, and will be their God. Those people of Corinth were Israelites. They were your people. They were white people. They were our ancestors, as well as those who lived out throughout the whole of Europe were our ancestors. And he said he's going to dwell among they were Gentiles in a way that we are given the interpretation of that word by most churches. These were your people. I will dwell among the children of Israel and be their God. Leviticus 26:11. And I will set my tabernacle among you. Who's the tabernacle? The name shall be called Jesus, for he shall save his people among their sins. He shall be called Emmanuel, for he God with us, we're told in Matthew. His name should be called Emmanuel, which meaning God with us. That's the tabernacle. I'll put my tabernacle among you, and my soul shall not abhor you, and walk among you, and will be your God. You shall be my. Where is Jesus Christ walking today? Is he walking among that desert little sandbox over there in Palestine? Is Jesus walking among the Jews? Are the Jews glorifying the name of Jesus Christ? Do you go over to Palestine and turn on a radio station and listen to gospel music? Paul's saying the temple of God has been placed in you, just like your ancestors. These people in Corinth were the Israelite brothers and sisters. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 10, he tells them, moreover, brethren, I would not that ye should be ignorant that our fathers were under the cloud, all passed through the sea. Remember when Israel came out of Egypt? They had a cloud that led them, a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire to lead them out of Egypt. And he tells these people in Corinth, the very people that most churches will tell us these were Gentiles. And Paul's saying the same thing we say today. He's reminding them of who they are. He's reminding them that you people in Corinth are Israel. You're the chosen of God. Now, he might have been called a racist for saying that, but nevertheless, that's what he did. Don't you remember who you are? He's saying, listen, folks, all our fathers, your fathers, and my fathers were all under the cloud. We all passed through the Red Sea. Your fathers wandered in the wilderness, he tells them. And he says, you're the temple of God. And that's what God told Israel they would be. It must have been kind of a awesome sight to look up into the night sky and see the pillar of fire in the sky, reminding them of that covenant that God made with them. So we're going to close. Hebrews 8:8 says, for finding fault with, behold, the days come, saith the Lord. Is it not on the screen? It don't make a difference. It's still in the Bible. Anyway, Hebrews 8:8. Mark it down, look at it later. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. A new covenant with who? Now, if what we're saying is correct, and I understand that people can disagree, and people may argue, and people say it's not true. I understand that. But if what we're saying is true, if Israel is our people, if Israel is the white race, we would call it today, who are told, commanded to be separate from all the other nations that we read a few moments ago, then the new covenant was made with our people. And the reason we are so messed up in our nation today, in closing, the reason we're so messed up in our nation today isn't because we don't build enough bridges. We are messed up because we built too many bridges to those that hate us, those who despise us, those who hate our heritage, those who hate our culture, those people who hate our race, hate our blood, hate our children, hate our values, hate our faith, and hate everything that made us a people. They hate those things. We've been building too many bridges to those people. And God, I believe, is telling us it's time we need to build walls of protection for our people and for our children and for our faith. It's time to build walls and not bridges. Our Father, we thank you for this wonderful time you've given us. We ask that you be with us and guide us. We ask that you help us to understand the very need for us to strengthen ourselves and be stalwart in our protection of our faith and our people and our children, our heritage, our culture. We ask that you help us remain strong and courageous and not fail. We know there are those who hate our people and hate our heritage and hate all those who even lift up a voice of national redemption for our people, who proclaim the wonderful message of white Christian revival. They can't tolerate it, and they hate it. Father, help us be strong, help us build a wall, and give us a wall of protection around us and our families. In your name we ask it, amen.
Excellent message, Pastor Rob. If you'd like to get more information regarding our church service as well as our publication, The Torch, you can write to us at Christian Revival Center, P.O. Box 602, Harrison, Arkansas 72601. That's Christian Revival Center, P.O. Box 602, Harrison, Arkansas 72601. Or you can email us at revival@southshore.com. Revival@southshore.com. And with that, if I could have Jonathan come up, and everyone please stand for one more song.
All right, everyone be standing and turn to page number 190. Page 190. Come thou fount.
Come thou fount of every blessing, to my heart to sing thy praise. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet, sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mountain live for the